push us.
Correct. Absolutely. No. You have your 10 minutes for address.
Oh,
Uh, so I will do the first 10 minutes. Then
oh,
Nikita Kochar, who's from Startup India in West India, will do her 10 minutes. And you will
okay.
have your 10 minutes. And then uh, we'll spend whatever time necessary on Q&A after 5:30. So
Okay.
we'll try to finish our talking in by 5:30.
Hi Ankush, how are you?
Hi Nikita, I'm good. How about you?
All well.
So I think I'll start. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the pre-summit roadshow for Haryana for the Prarambh Startup India International Summit. We are delighted to welcome you all to this pre-summit roadshow. On behalf of Vicky, I, Aishwarya, will give you a brief on what the summit is about, and then we'll open the floor to our speakers, our panelists here. So, actually, Prarambh marks the fifth anniversary of the Startup India initiative, which was launched by our Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi on January 16, 2016. The initiative brings a sharp focus on startups, and it also helps catalyze the Indian startup ecosystem to provide innovative solutions for local as well as global needs. In the last 5 years, India has become the fastest growing ecosystem in the startup ecosystem in the world, with the presence of over 30 unicorns, out of which 9 have emerged in 2020 itself. Prarambh is being hosted by DPIIT, which is a collaborative effort of industry and the leading institutions such as FICCI, IIN, etc. As a build up to the summit, we are organizing roadshows across India, and therefore we are here today with the panelists and the participants from Haryana. Um, uh, so, with these, I'll request Mr. Ajay Mutrija to deliver his welcome remarks.
Thank you very much, Ashwarya. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's my honor to welcome you all at this Haryana Roadshow for Prarambh Startup India International Summit. The prime aim of today's roadshow is to sensitize the startup ecosystem players from the state of Haryana and also other participants from other states about the Prarambh Summit that's going to be held on January 15th and 16th of 2021. And this is being organized by Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, DPIIT, Government of India. Prarambh is being organized to mark the fifth anniversary of the Startup India initiative, which was initiated in January 2016 by our Honorable Prime Minister. The Startup India initiative has provided a huge impetus to the startup ecosystem of the country during the last 5 years. Today, India is the third largest startup ecosystem in the world, with startups contributing immensely to the innovation-driven growth of Indian economy. India is also home to 30 plus unicorns, with 11 startups entering the unicorn clubs in the last calendar year of pandemic. In line with the Honorable Prime Minister's vision of one startup in every district, India now has more than 40,000 startups recognized across 586 districts from all 28 states of our country and 8 union territories. Startup India has been successful in igniting the minds of young innovators and entrepreneurs across the country. The current median age of the founder entrepreneurs is approximately 31 years. These startups also come from more than 48 industrial sectors. The Indian startup ecosystem has seen substantial growth in not only the metro cities but across the length and breadth of the country. Of the 40,000 plus recognized startups, almost 55% of them come from tier 1 cities, and the balance 45% come from tier 2 and tier 3 cities. Today, 30 states and union territories have their own startup policies to nurture and scale homegrown startups. In addition to creating a policy-led enabling ecosystem, we have also worked hard to create a market for our entrepreneurs, which is very critical for their sustainable growth. At the government e-marketplace GEM portal, 4,000 plus startups have already registered to offer their goods and services to government organizations and public sector units. The COVID-19 pandemic has exponentially increased the importance of entrepreneurship and innovation in India. Entrepreneurship is an adaptive wildcard in the complex, emerging, and uncertain post COVID-19 world. How entrepreneurs can seize new opportunities and take risks has helped them to increase the range of options available to them in India and in the world, and how to navigate through these precarious times. One of the greatest examples is that today India has become the world's second largest producer of personal protection equipment, with the industry worth rupees 7,000 crores, of which almost 1,000 plus manufacturers are producing 450,000 units cumulatively per day of PPE. The smartest and the toughest will survive and come out stronger in the post-COVID world. Many Indian startups have been able to modify their business plans and pivot during the last 9 months and create business continuity models. Several startups have seen an opportunity in the current COVID-19 time periods. Startups are developing now innovative, low-cost solutions in response to the pandemic, right from sanitizers, tracing apps, low-cost ventilators, disinfection of masks, and many consumable items. Many startups quickly adapted their operations to meet the current market demand. For example, one of the recognized startups of FICCI Millennium Alliance, Saral Design, which was producing low-cost sanitary pads in India on fully automated machines, have now started manufacturing 3-ply surgical masks with the help of corporate partnership, which is Mahindra Group. The tie-up with Mahindra Group aimed at fast-tracking the production process to aid the healthcare workers to receive the 3-ply surgical mask quickly, as it was necessary for Indian startups to start addressing these needs. FICCI, through its Millennium Alliance initiative, is also enabling Indian innovations such as Saral Designs to share their innovation solutions in other countries, including in East Africa and South Asia. I can confidently say that startups are going to play a significant role in making India Atmanirbhar. The government of Haryana has also come up with a robust startup policy to unlock the innovation potential of the startup by providing seed funding, incubation support, market access through government procurement, among many other benefits. Aligned with the Prime Minister's Make in India campaign, the state government of Haryana is encouraging entrepreneurs. Gurugram, the IT hub of Haryana, has evolved in a technology startup hub of India and has nurtured many successful startups, which now have become huge and big, well-established brands. Haryana's economic growth has been exemplary, and despite being geographically small state, its contribution to the national economy is significantly high as a percentage of the GDP. While the state economy is home to strong manufacturing sector, it is maturing at a fast pace with both services and IT sector gaining ground, making Haryana well poised to initiate the startup revolution. The government of Haryana has developed an entrepreneurship and startup policy, which was announced in 2017 and now further modified for providing assistance to startups and innovation. The core objective of this policy is to provide distinct levels of government support at every stage and to create a holistic and sustainable ecosystem. We have seen young entrepreneurs from Haryana coming forward to address development challenges of the state of Haryana and for the country with innovative solutions. In conclusion, I would encourage the startups of Haryana to continue their contribution for the innovation and for their success, for the country's growth, and also come and actively participate in this Prarambh summit being held virtually during January 15th and 16th, and come and interact with the best minds of the global entrepreneurial ecosystem so that we can connect, collaborate, and catalyze for growth. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ajay sir.
Sure.
Thank you for your input and the welcome remarks. I will now request Nikita to give her presentation on the Prarambh Summit and give us the details for the summit.
Thank you, Aishwarya. Thank you, Ajay sir, for taking us through that insight on the Indian startup landscape. And I'll just share my screen and get started shortly. I hope my screen is visible to all.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Nikita from Startup India, and today I'll take you through a short presentation on the upcoming Startup India International Summit, as well as the National Startup Awards and the State Startup Ranking. So Startup India is the flagship initiative of the Government of India, and it's intended to build a strong ecosystem for nurturing innovation across the country. So the initiative has not only brought a sharp focus on Indian solutions, but it's also accelerated Indian entrepreneurs to create solutions for the global market as well. Since the launch of the initiative, several programs have been undertaken to uplift the spirit and to go hand in hand with the vision of the Honorable Prime Minister of creating a country of job creators as opposed to job seekers. So as we can see on our screen, India is the third largest startup ecosystem in the world. And we have about 30 startup policies with over 41,000 startups recognized today. And interestingly, 45% of our startups come from tier 2 and tier 3 cities. So when we look at what really counts as a startup in India, we try and look at the entity type. So we'll try and see that it's a private limited company, LLP, or a registered partnership. That it's also 10 years from the date of incorporation and doesn't exceed a turnover of over 100 crores in any fiscal year. In addition to that, we'll also try and look at whether the innovation is, whether it's working toward innovation, development or improvement of certain products or services, and if it's a scalable model with a high potential for employment generation or wealth creation. So we have a recognition procedure that we look into, and it's a fairly simple process. We have an online application form where we look at an applicant submitting their founder and team details, their entity details, their business model, and the works. After which you've uploaded your documents and you submit your application for evaluation. The Startup India team spends about 24 to 48 hours evaluating one's application, and if it is seen as suitable, the recognition is granted. If not, startups are still given an additional opportunity to apply for the recognition process. So coming to the talk of the hour, Prarambh, as we know, the noun implies an auspicious start. And aiming to bring India's entrepreneurial force onto the global map, DPIIT has conceived the Startup India International Summit on January 15th and 16th, 2021. So the summit marks the 5th anniversary of the Startup India initiative, and is also aimed to lay a foundation for multilateral cooperation and engagement with countries from across the globe, and enable us to hone these startup ecosystems collectively. So this 2-day-long summit will bring together over 200 marquee speakers across 25 countries to facilitate discussion on innovation, emerging technology, policies, initiatives, and enable government and international organizations to share their views on on challenges and problems that matter not just for India but for the entire world. So when we look at the objectives of the Startup India International Summit, it's a select gathering of innovators, entrepreneurs, investors, regulators, industry and academic luminaries from India, as well as across the world, including from BIMSTEC nations. So apart from deliberating on good practices from best of the ecosystems across the world, the sessions are also designed to showcase the spread and depth of innovation in India. So the idea is to attain the attention of global capital for startups in India, mobilize domestic capital, as well as provide opportunities for accessing international markets, and have our startups and other stakeholders come together to deliberate on policy provisions as well. So we do hope that it will lead to an inspiration and encourage our youth to actually become job creators instead of job seekers. So these are a few key highlights of the summit. We'll be having a few star talks, sessions with unicorns. We'll have a virtual startup showcase, and we do hope to have some sessions on social innovation, women entrepreneurship, and these are all scheduled programs that we do encourage startups from across the country and Haryana here today to join the summit to learn more. So the inaugural session will be addressed by the Honorable CIM, Shri Piyush Goyal, and we will have, it will include remarks from dignitaries and representatives from across BIMSTEC countries on improving international collaboration and cooperation as well. The grand plenary will conclude the summit, and the session is likely to be graced with the presence of the Honorable Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi, and we do see some key announcements being made to provide huge impetus to the startup ecosystem. Moving forward, we have the state startup ranking. So the ranking on support to startup ecosystems was launched in 2018 with the key objective of encouraging states and union territories to take proactive steps towards strengthening their startup ecosystems. So the implementation of the states ranking framework has essentially been conducted as a capacity development exercise, and it focuses not only on dissemination of best practices, but also on promoting mutual learning and creating healthy competition to support startups within these states. So the ranking framework has proved to be an effective tool in creating an ecosystem that supports innovation and entrepreneurship. As mentioned by Ajay sir earlier as well, we have over 30 states with startup policies today. As you can see on your screen, we have about 7 reform areas that we'll be going through in the state startup ranking for 2020. And states and UTs will be divided into categories. As A and B to ensure uniformity and a level playing field for states and union territories as well. We have 26 action points, and these will range from incubation support, funding support, fostering innovation, entrepreneurship, mentorship, and more. In fact, owing to the growing capacities in states, we'll also be recognizing individual officers and key officials who have added significantly to their startup ecosystem within their state. In fact, as a result of last year's ranking exercise, we have over 1,500 startups funded. We've hosted over 450 events, startup events, and we have had over 1,200 women entrepreneurs supported as well. So, despite the challenging times, moving on to the National Startup Awards of 2020, despite the challenging times, we have had unprecedented growth and resilience in this year. We've had startups coming out, as mentioned earlier today, coming up with their solutions for COVID in health tech, med tech, biotech, and many more, and all the sunrise sectors coming up. So, as a successor to the first edition. Excuse me, the National Startup Awards 21 will recognize and reward outstanding startups and enablers that have demonstrated exceptional qualities. Consideration will also be given to champion sectors identified by the government in, going hand in hand with the vision of an Atmanirbhar Bharat. So we'll have some interesting sectors ranging from women-led startups to startups with particular innovations during COVID, as well as those that are promoting Indic languages in India. So here we have a couple of success stories that we had from NSA 2020. Skyroot Aerospace was one of the startups that was actually recognized by the Honorable Prime Minister himself, and they had the opportunity to present their solution and talk about their space solution on this platform. And then we also have Scapic Innovations. Scapic was actually acquired at 100% stake by Flipkart. And we have seen incredible growth amongst our other national startup awardees as well, getting large-scale access to investor connects, pitching sessions, mentorship sessions as well. So we do hope that you'll join us. These are a few of the sectors that we have in the National Startup Awards 21. And these will range, we have some subsectors and special categories under those as mentioned. So the National Startup Awards 21 will have, certain fiscal incentives, but also the other incentives mentioned. A cash prize of 5 lakhs will be awarded to startups, and incubators and accelerators are also encouraged to apply and will receive a fiscal benefit of of 15 lakhs to one winning incubator and one winning accelerator. So these applications are open until 31st January. We do encourage startups, incubators, accelerators, e-cells to apply from across the ecosystem in Haryana. And we also look forward to having you at Prarambh, the Startup India International Summit on 15th and 16th of January 2021. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Nikita. We'll take up the questions for the summit pertaining to the summit later on. Now I'll request Ankush, Director OBIO Room Spaces, to give his remarks.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Ajay, and thank you, Nikita, for those wonderful sessions regarding the Prarambh show. I'll share my bit of startup. What is a startup? Why a startup? What is all about a startup in the next 5 to 6 minutes? So to start with, a startup is a company designed to grow fast. Being newly founded does not in itself make a company startup. Nor is it necessary for a startup to work on technology or take venture funding, right? So to some sort of exit they can look for. Only essential thing is growth. Everything else we associate with startups follows from growth. So essentially growth is the factor which we should relate to a startup. If you want to start one, it's important to understand that startups are so hard that you can't be pointed off to the side and hope to succeed. You have to know that growth is what you are after. The good news is, if you get growth, everything else tends to fall in its place, which means you can grow in a sense that you can grow like a compass, like growth is like a compass to make almost every decision you face when you are doing a startup. Coming to the next point with respect to the startups, let's start with a distinction that you should be obvious, but it's often overlooked. Not every company or newly founded company is a startup. Millions of companies are getting started every year in India and across the globe. Only a tiny fraction of startups, most are service businesses. It can be a restaurant, it can be a barber shop or a plumber or anything, right? These are not startups actually, except in a few unusual cases. If I take a context from Indian business, you must have heard the name of company called as Urban Clap. So let us see how they have differentiated themselves to let's see how they have differentiated themselves to not to call themselves as a service company, but a pure and a core startup. A barber shop is not designed to grow fast actually, whereas a search engine or a company like Urban Clap are designed and integrated to grow fast, which is actually, we should call it as a startup. To the next point, when I say startups are designed to grow fast, I mean it in two senses, basically. Partially, I mean design in the sense of intended, because most startups fail. But I also mean startups are different by nature. In the same way, a small seedling has a different destiny from a bean sprout, because you must have cooked that in your houses. Everyone has a different way of doing things, and destinations are different. That difference is why there is a distinct word startup for companies designed to grow fast. If all companies were essentially similar, but some through luck or their efforts, they're essentially similar, but founders, the companies who are governed with these founders grow very fast. We would not need a separate word to say that. We could just talk about super successful companies and less successful ones. But in fact, startups do have a different sort of DNA from other businesses. Google is not just a barbershop whose founders are unusually lucky and hardworking. Google was different from the beginning. Companies like Tesla were different from the beginning. Even if I see in Indian context, to start with, we started Innovate in India, which is primarily a co-working space, a leading co-working space. Initially, we thought that it will be catering to a different audience, to the startups. But from beginning, we were projected to take it as a startup to make it more, to make it grow rapidly first. Then we alternatively thought that it should scale also. So to grow rapidly, you need not to make something you can sell to a big market. That's the difference between a company like Google and a small barbershop. A barbershop usually has that tactics to not to scale, but to sustain the business in that small shop. For a company to grow really big, it must make something lots of people want. Second, reach and serve all those people who actually sees this as a demand. Whereas a small company doing small things in a fine space, which is kind of a department to them. Almost everyone needs a haircut. The problem for a barber shop is a retail establishment. A barber shop serves customer in person, and few will travel far for a haircut. And even if they do, the barber shop could not accommodate them because of the limited constraint of space and other things. On the other way, if I talk about technology, writing software is a great way to solve first, but you can still end up constrained in different factors. If you write software to teach kind of a language to, say, Hindi to some Tibetan speaking people, like you will be able to reach most of the people who want it, but there won't be many of them. So audience is the second biggest thing which you have to focus on. If you make software to teach English to Chinese speakers, however, you are in startup territory. So that's one thing. Most business are tightly constrained in these factors. The distinctive feature of successful startups is that they are not. Coming to the next part, which is of course the ideas. Ideas are something which are the most important thing when you start any sort of journey, which you call it as startups. It might seem that it would always be better to start a startup than an ordinary business. If you're going to start a company, why not start the type with the most potential one? The catch is that this is fairly efficient market. If you write software, for example, to teach again Hindi to say Tibetan people, you won't have much competition. If you write software to teach English to Chinese speakers, you will face good competition. Precisely, there's such a larger price for that also. So, audience and the market you have to see before you proceed to any sort of territory. The constraints that limit ordinary companies also protect them. That's the trade-off actually. If you start a small shop, you only have to compete with the local area, local stakeholders. If you start a big company or say a search engine, you have to compete with the whole world. So that's something what differentiates you in terms of audience. The most important thing that the constraints on a normal business protect it from it's not competition. However, but the difficult of coming up with the new ideas. If you open a small say restaurant in a particular neighborhood, as well as limiting your whole potential, protecting you from the competitors that geographically constrain also help define your company. So it's kind of a small restaurant plus your neighborhood is a sufficient idea for a small business. Similarly, for companies constrained in that form, your niche both protects and defines you. So that is subject for your call to understand your basic turf before proceeding with anything else. Whereas if you want to start a startup, you are probably going to have to think of something fairly novel. A startup has to make something it can deliver to a larger market. And ideas of that type are so valuable that all obvious ones are already taken. That space of ideas has been so thoroughly picked over that a startup generally has to work on something everyone else has overlooked. I was going to write that in a way that it has to make a conscious effort to find the ideas everyone else has overlooked. But that's not how startups or the startup founders are sufficiently do that. They are actually very much different from other people's that ideas few others can seem obvious to them. Perhaps later they step back and notice they have found an idea in everyone else's blind spot, right? And from that point make a deliberate effort to stay there. But at that moment when successful startups get started, much of the innovation is unconscious. Coming to the next point, what's the different about successful founders is that they can see different problems. And it's a particular good combination both to be good at technology and to face problems. So it can be hustler mode, which a startup founder has to be in, that they can face problems and solve it because technology changes are so rapid that formally bad ideas often becomes good without anyone noticing. So it's like Steve Wozniak. A problem was that he wanted his own computer. If you know, that was an unusual problem in 1975 when he was doing this. But technological change was about to make it a much more common one because he not only wanted a computer but knew how to build them. Wozniak was able to make himself one, but the problem he solved for himself became one that Apple solved for billions or millions of people in the coming years. But by the time it was obvious to ordinary people that this was a big market, Apple was already established. So in a way, we call it as first mover advantage to a some extent. Coming to the other part, Google. Google has similar origins. Larry and Sergey wanted to search the web, but unlike most people, they had the technical expertise both to notice that existing search engines were not as good as they were thinking it to be. So over the next few years, what they did is they tried to solve everyone's problem as they were trying to solve their own problem. So they did some sort of basic old algorithms, but they were not good enough. So they were kind of by the time everyone else realized how important search was, Google was already entrenched. So again, example of first mover advantage. Coming to the growth, I would relate it to kind of a rate, the growth rate. So how fast does a company have to grow to be considered as a startup? That's a basic question with everyone, in everyone's mind. There is no precise answer to that one. Startup is a pole, not a threshold, right? Starting one is at one first more than a declaration of one's ambition. You are committing not just to starting a company, but to starting a fast growing one, and you are thus committing to search one of the rare ideas of that type. But at that first, you have no more than commitment. Starting a startup is like being an actor in that respect. That too, I would say getting work makes him a successful actor, but he does not only become an actor when he's successful. He becomes a master of all the things, but so trait of he'll get all the good traits of everything, but master to few specific zones when he becomes a good founder in that way. So I would like to summarize the whole fact of a growth of a successful startup in three phases. To summarize the whole thing which I wanted to deliver here, the first is there is an initial period of slow or no growth while the startup tries to figure out what they are trying to do. As the startup figures out how to make something lots of people want to reach to those people, there is a period of rapid growth. Third, eventually successful startup will grow into big company. Growth will slow, partially due to internal limits or maybe external stakeholders, and partially because the company is starting to bump up against the limits of the market it serves. Then you will be able to develop a sort of a S curve, and then you will be able to develop a product or a company which you call it as okay fit for my market and my audience, where I have actually uh, got to know what my turf is all about, and then you can actually deliver in terms of the potential one. I feel that Prarambh, this roadshow which the team is initiating up, will be a good platform as well as uh, a good area where these startups can explore themselves, where they call themselves at the rapid stage of growth and will be able to deliver not only in the area of entrepreneurship for profit, but for non-profit, social entrepreneurship, and women entrepreneurship as well. So looking forward to the roadshow. I wish all the best to all the stakeholders. And if we can be of any help to anyone right there, I think we are always available as a part of this ecosystem to build, upgrow. And I think we should keep on innovating, and no pandemic should let us stop anywhere with this growth. And this is a fundamental shift and the drive which we have seen in past few years, that such pandemics should not stop, but it should be treated like an opportunity for us to develop and pivot our models and make it fit for the market. So thank you everyone, and I wish all the best to this roadshow Prarambh and the team is with this. Thank you.
Thanks, Ankush. Thank you for giving us the details. And I mean, you clearly laid out the details on the startup ecosystem. Thank you for giving us those insights. Now we have some queries from the startups. So, firstly, I wanted to put this out. For the startups who are being incorporated in Haryana, I mean, if Nikita can answer this question, what are the benefits that the government is providing if the startup is incorporated in Haryana?
Thanks, Ashwarya. Sorry about my connection is a bit unstable, so I would not be able to put my video on. So the Startup India recognition provides a host of benefits. this is not limited to the area of incorporation in any sense. It is limited to the eligibility criteria that we have laid out for our startups, as I laid out in my presentation. And of course, for further insight on that, you can write to us, and we will give you a detailed list on what will actually qualify to be recognized by the government. But we do have a range of schemes. We have, in terms of IPR, we will help with fast tracking of startup patent applications. We can aid rebate on the filing of application, as well as assist you with access to a panel of facilitators in IP applications. We also, Government of India has also authorized its ministries and departments to relax norms in public procurement. So startups are entitled to avail exemption on things like prior turnover, prior experience, as well as earnest money deposit. And we did see that we wanted to reduce the regulatory burden on startups. So startups are allowed to self-certify their compliance under 6 labor and 3 environment laws as well for a period of 3 to 5 years. Uh, Other than that, there's also a tax exemption that they can look into. Recognize startups. If you once you apply for DPIIT recognition and have achieved that, you can apply for tax exemption for a period of 3 consecutive years out of your 10 years since incorporation. So these are some of the benefits. We of course a recognized startup can access the fund of funds that is managed by SIDBI, and is then taken through venture capitalists to startups. And in addition to that, we have the Startup India Hub, which is over 4 lakh users, where we have investors, accelerators, mentors, incubators, evangelists, entrepreneurs, and you can actually access the host of benefits that we have there, including pro bono resources such as those of AWS, Freshworks, Zoho, as well as some of the corporate innovation programs that we host on our platform actively.
Okay, thanks, Nikita. I think that answers the query. So another thing that has come up is for the startups who want to scale up, or uh, 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 I mean who are looking to further accelerate their businesses. I mean, for an early stage entrepreneur, if Ankush can answer this question, what are the key sectors that can help them, especially for looking for in a state like Haryana? What are the key sectors that they can focus on?
I think after this pandemic, which we have learned that uh, essentially health tech is something, one major field we should focus on, because that's a huge opportunity associated to that. Other is edtech, of course, has been boomed in a way. In somehow, I have a close affinity towards logistics as well, which we should always see. And apart from that, considering that environment is something at a stake, considering the present scenario, EVs are the biggest concern. Or there was a recent news that Tesla is coming in, and there are a lot more things associated to that domain also. So my one cent is that one should focus on the EV segment. Plus, if I talk about the sectors, then agri-tech, health tech, and health and edtech are something essentially major areas one can look for if they are just starting up.
Thanks,
Hope
Ankush.
that answers, Ashwara.
One another query for Nikita. Yeah, I think that answers the question. And just another thing for Nikita, for the summit. Can you, if we can highlight, I mean, what are the major, benefits that the startups can get? I mean, and especially for the startups from Haryana. What are the, I mean, if you can just specify like 1, 2, 3, what are the key benefits that they can avail by logging into the summit and by joining the summit?
Sure. Thanks, Ashwarya. So the summit is essentially a platform to share best practices, ensure knowledge dissemination, try and have interaction with international stakeholders, and actually encourage startups who are looking to expand to India expand internationally, as well as have stakeholders from there who are looking to invest in India, kind of come to one platform to communicate. So there will be sessions on foundations of a robust startup ecosystem. To name a few, we'll have something on promoting women entrepreneurship. We'll also have something on idea to proof of concept, which we see startups do look for insight on that. And we'll have a bunch of information on market access for startups and the go-to market strategy that they can look at. There is also sessions on building unicorns, harnessing innovation in states, as well as really determining what the way ahead will be for Startup India, and how states and startups in these states can actually avail these incentives and benefits. So while we do aim to bring a lot of our global best practices that we have and international market access, we also hope to achieve from this our next steps as Startup India, and enabling the startup ecosystem as a startup nation to actually build on mobilizing the capital that we already have in place. So we do encourage all our startups to join us. We do have closed door sessions as well that are B2B sessions for startups with investors. However, these applications have now closed, but we do encourage you to join us on all the other sessions through the summit.
Thanks, Nikita. I think these were the questions that we had for the session. Any other discussion points or the panelists would like to add? I think that's it from all of.
Aishwarya, we can't hear you.
Yeah.
Sorry, I think my connection got a bit lost. Yeah. So I think that's it from all of our end. On behalf of Fiki, I would like to I would like to thank everyone for joining us today for the Haryana Virtual Roadshow for the Startup India International Summit. And I would especially like to thank Mr. Ajay Mutrija, member Fiki Startup Committee, for joining us today. I would like to thank Ankush, Director, Obai Room Spaces, for joining us today. And especially thanks to Nikita from the Startup India team for giving her presentation on the Prarambh Summit and on the National Startup Awards and the state startup rankings. One thing I would like to share with all of you that over the last decade, Fiki has played an important role in fostering and nurturing the Indian startup ecosystem. Fiki is currently implementing 14 plus national and global programs through the public-private partnership, and we are providing funding, business development, mentoring, and capacity building support to Indian startups. I would also like to inform you that recently we have launched the Fiki for Startups initiative, which is an extension of our work. And the Fiki for Startup membership initiative, we are providing an extensive benefit package connecting the Fiki corporate members, vendors, and industry experts directly to the Indian Angel Network. And through this, we are providing access to the soon-to-be launched Fiki and Social Venture Fund, which gives access to Fiki innovation and startup programs. In addition to this, the membership also provides you access to exhibitions, delegations, conferences at special cost, and helps you connect to the global investor community, and provides a platform for us to get your inputs on policy advocacy on behalf for the government on behalf of the startups. So I would encourage all the startups present here today to please avail this membership free of cost till 15th of January, and it's open to all startups. Fiki is very proud to partner with DPIIT and Startup India for this virtual Prarambh Startup India International Summit. We look forward and encourage maximum participation from all the startups that have joined us today. On behalf of Vicky, I would once again like to thank everyone for joining us today, and we look forward to interacting with you with all the participants on the main summit. Thank you, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you. All the best.
Thank you, Ajay. Thank you, Nikita. Thank you,
Great.
Aishwarya, for
All the
arranging
best.
this.
Thank
Ankush
you.
and back. All the best.
Bye.
Bye, Ankush.